Callum Bradford shoved open the door to room 1803, tossing his phone on the entry table and dragging a hand through his rain-dampened hair, completely unaware he'd just walked into the wrong hotel room. "Wait, what the hell?" a woman's voice rang out from inside. Callum froze mid-step, blinking as a young woman in an oversized t-shirt bolted upright on the bed, her eyes wide, clutching a pint of ice cream like a shield. A rom-com flick was paused on the television, and the scent of vanilla bath salts still lingered in the air. "Who are you?" she asked, tightening the blanket around her legs. He stared at her for a second, then looked back at the door. "Room 1803, he said aloud to himself. "Yeah, that's this room." "No, I booked 1803, she raised an eyebrow. "Well, I've been here since this afternoon, and unless you're housekeeping or a confused burglar, you're very much in the wrong place." Callum's brows furrowed. "Can I?" He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his wallet, and scanned the little plastic room key. "Son of a," he exhaled sharply. "The guy at the front desk gave me the wrong key. I'm supposed to be in 1813. The woman blinked, then slowly she cracked a smile. "Well, congratulations, you've officially crashed a solo girls' night," Callum chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm really sorry." "I didn't mean to barge in," she shrugged. "At least you didn't come in swinging a bottle of champagne or something." He grinned, finally getting a decent look at her barefaced, curls piled on top of her head, eyes that held more spark than the city skyline behind her. "Not my style." "Well," she said, tucking her legs under her, "I'm Lila Faulkner, you are." "Callum Bradford, I swear I'm not usually this much of a disaster," Lila laughed. "That makes two of us," he hesitated. "I'll go." "Again, I'm sorry." But something about the entire moment, how absurd it was, how comfortable she looked, how unbothered she seemed by his accidental break-in, made him pause at the door. She tilted her head. "How about this? You owe me. Ever crashed a girl's night?" He blinked. "You're inviting me to stay. Why not? You already broke in. Might as well make it worth the story." Callum chuckled, stunned. "All right, what's the agenda?" Lila grinned, reaching for the remote. "Ice cream, bad rom-coms, and brutal honesty." He dropped onto the armchair. "I can do honest." She handed him a spoon. "Your ice cream pick, mint chocolate chip," she mock-gasped. "You're one of those, and you're going to tell me vanilla bean is superior, obviously." She took a dramatic bite. Callum laughed, watching her. She was nothing like the women he usually met. No stiff smiles, no careful small talk, no pretending, just real, warm, funny. "So what brings you to New York?" she asked. "Business, meetings, conferences, the usual," she nodded. "Let me guess, finance." He shook his head. "Tech, startup guy," he smiled. "Something like that." She narrowed her eyes. "You're being suspiciously vague." Callum leaned back. "And you're suspiciously curious." "I'm a kindergarten teacher," she said, as if that explained everything. "Curiosity is in the job description," he chuckled. "Fair enough." They went back and forth like that for hours, trading stories, laughing at movie cliches, arguing over toppings. At some point, she offered him one of the fluffy hotel robes, and he actually put it on, much to her amusement. When the clock hit midnight, she glanced at the time and sighed. "Okay, I should probably kick you out before you turn into a pumpkin." He stood reluctantly. "Yeah, I should head to my actual room." They walked to the door. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching him. "Thanks for not freaking out," he said. Lila smiled. "Thanks for crashing the most fun night I've had in a long time." He hesitated again. "Can I see you again?" She raised a brow. "You don't even know what kind of ice cream I really like. Let me take you to dinner. Somewhere nice." "You can order whatever weird flavor you want," she laughed. "You always offer fancy dinners to women you accidentally break in on." "No," Callum said simply. "Just the ones I don't want to stop thinking about." She stared at him for a second. Then, slowly, she pulled the door open wider. "Pick me up tomorrow at 7, he smiled. "Done." As he walked down the hall, heart racing, Callum had no idea that the woman in room 1803, the one with wild curls and vanilla bean ice cream, was about to turn his carefully built world upside down. The following evening, A sleek black car pulled up in front of a cozy brownstone cafe tucked between a florist and an old bookstore just off Lexington Avenue. Callum stepped out, the collar of his navy coat turned up against the chill, and scanned the entrance. Inside, Lila stood near the hostess stand, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear as she glanced at the door. Her dress simple, elegant, with soft mauve fabric that caught the golden light wasn't designed to impress, yet somehow did exactly that. She looked up and met his gaze, lips curving into something cautious but curious. "You clean up all right," she said as he approached. Callum gave a quiet laugh. "Thanks, you look." He paused, studying her. "Like I'm going to say something cheesy if I'm not careful." "Then maybe don't," she teased. The hostess led them to a table near the window, where flickering candlelight danced between them and the hum of quiet jazz filled the space. Callum pulled out her chair without thinking, then sat, stretching his hand toward the wine list before pausing. "Do you drink?" he asked. "On first dates?" "Only if it's red and costs more than my rent," he grinned. Challenge accepted. They ordered a bottle from the top of the list. Callum didn't look twice at the price and let the conversation settle between them like a well-worn coat. But this time, the air was different. There was no mistaken hotel room, no accidental charm. This was deliberate. "Intentional." "So," she said, swirling her glass, "what kind of tech do you work in?" Callum hesitated, then set the glass down. "Infrastructure software. My company builds back-end systems for, well, things most people never see but use every day." "Like what?" "Hospital networks. Airline booking systems, payment processing. It's not sexy, but it keeps the world running." She tilted her head. "That sounds like a lot of pressure." "It is, especially when one error can cost millions or lives." Lila's eyes flicked up sharply. "You've had that happen?" He didn't answer right away. "There was an outage once. A hospital system went down for 7 minutes. It wasn't my code, but it was my company. That kind of thing sticks." Lila didn't fill the silence. She just let it sit, letting him own it without judgment. "And now?" she asked. "Now I triple-check everything. I don't sleep when we push updates. I've built a team that doesn't make mistakes because we can't afford to." She nodded slowly. "That's a lot to carry." "I've gotten used to it." Lila leaned forward. "But what do you actually like about it?" He blinked. "What? You're clearly good at it. But do you like it?" Callum opened his mouth, then paused. No one ever asked him that. Investors asked about returns. Partners asked about growth. Reporters asked about numbers. "I like solving things," he said finally. "I like seeing something broken and knowing I can fix it. I like control." Lila laughed softly. "That tracks. What does that mean? You broke into my hotel room, refused to leave without an invitation, and now you're ordering wine that could pay off my student loans." He chuckled. "I didn't refuse to leave. You hesitated, twice." "Fine." "I hesitated." Their food arrived: seared duck for her, steak au poivre for him, and the conversation shifted with each course. They talked about places they'd never been, books they hadn't finished, and strange childhood fears. Lila confessed she used to think thunder was the sound of clouds arguing. Callum admitted he'd once tried to build a robot friend out of a toaster and a calculator. As dessert came creme brulee with burnt sugar cracked like glass. Lila sat back, watching him. "You always do this." Callum wiped his hands with the linen napkin. "Do what?" "Take women to restaurants where the silverware weighs more than a small dog." He raised an eyebrow. "Is it too much?" "No, it's—" She paused. "It's not what I expected from me, expected from anyone. Most guys grab takeout and hope you're impressed by their Spotify playlists." He smiled. "I don't do playlists." "What do you do?" "I make sure the night is something you won't forget." Lila looked down, then back up. "Why?" Callum's gaze didn't waver. "Because I don't want to be forgettable." The air between them shifted again, less playful now, more exposed. She picked up her purse as they stood. Outside, the city was slick with rain again, the pavement catching reflections from the streetlights. Callum held the door open and she stepped out, pulling her coat tight. "Can I walk you back?" he asked. "I'm a New Yorker. I can handle 6 blocks." I didn't say you couldn't, I asked if I could. Lila looked at him, measuring something she hadn't before. Sure. They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps sinking without effort. The city moved around them, cars, voices, late-night laughter, but none of it touched the space they shared. At the corner near her building, she stopped. This is me. Callum nodded. Thanks for tonight. Thanks for not making it weird, he smiled. Yet, she hesitated, then stepped closer. I don't usually let people in, not like this. Me neither. She studied him for a beat longer. You're not what I thought you'd be, he leaned down, voice low. Neither are you. Lila gave a quiet laugh, then reached up and kissed him, quick, intentional, and certain. When she pulled back, her eyes searched his. Don't overthink it. Callum's voice was rougher than before. I won't. She turned and disappeared into the building, leaving him standing there, hands in his pockets, rain gathering along the edge of his collar and a sudden, unfamiliar ache settling in his chest. He didn't know what this was. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let it slip away. Callum hadn't been nervous in years, not during million-dollar investor pitches, not at international keynotes, not even when he'd stood across from CEOs twice his age and told them their systems were obsolete. But 3 days after walking Lila home, as he stood under the soft lighting of a West Village art gallery he'd rented out exclusively for their third date, his heart pounded like a man out of his depth. The gallery was minimalist and airy, paintings from a rising local artist lining the walls. A jazz trio played faintly in the corner, and a server passed by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, truffle risotto bites and rosemary lamb skewers. Callum had told his assistant to make it low-key, then rejected 24 options before settling on this. It wasn't low-key. When Lila arrived, the hush of the room did nothing to muffle her entrance. She wore a long-sleeved navy dress that looked like it had been made for her, her hair swept up, gold earrings catching the light as she scanned the space. Did you seriously rent out an entire gallery? She asked the moment she reached him. He gestured toward the art. I like supporting small artists. She studied him. You didn't answer the question. I didn't think I had to. Lila stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. You do realize normal dates involve, like, tacos and a walk in the park, right? I'm not normal. That, she said, plucking a risotto bite from a passing tray, is becoming increasingly obvious. As the evening unfolded, she wandered from painting to painting, occasionally glancing back at him with a look he couldn't quite decipher. He followed at her respectful distance, letting her take it in. When she stopped in front of a piece, an abstract riot of brushstrokes in charcoal and crimson, he joined her. What do you see? She asked. Callum tilted his head. Chaos. Look again. He did. The longer he stared, the more he noticed hidden loops, tiny repetitions, deliberate symmetry beneath the surface. Control, he murmured. Lila nodded. That's what I see too. They stood in silence until she turned to him. You grew up with structure, didn't you? He nodded slowly. My father was military, moved us every couple years. Rules were sacred, schedules were gospel. I figured, you always look like you're bracing for impact. He glanced at her. And you, she shrugged. My mom was a poet. My dad left when I was 6. We lived paycheck to paycheck, never knew what the next month looked like. We'd get eviction notices taped to the door and she'd write "Hate about them." Callum's brow furrowed. That doesn't sound easy. It wasn't, but it made me quick on my feet. I learned to find beauty in disaster. He looked at her differently then, not just with admiration, but with a protectiveness he didn't quite understand. Later, after the gallery had emptied and the trio packed up their instruments, Lila lingered near a painting of a stormy coastline. This one's my favorite, she said. You want it? She glanced at him. You're not serious. I can buy it. That's not the point. Then what is? She turned to him, her expression suddenly guarded. You keep doing these things, grand gestures, exclusive dinners, private galleries. But I don't need you to impress me. I'm not trying to impress you. Then what are you doing, Callum? I'm trying to show you that you matter, he said, voice low. That I see you. Lila's expression softened, but only slightly. You barely know me. I know how your eyes change when you're concentrating. I know you touch your collarbone when you're nervous. I know you don't trust easily, and I know it terrifies you how much you want to." Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. "You're not just another woman I'm taking to dinner, Lila. You're the first person in years who makes me feel like I'm not performing." She stepped back, just enough to break the tension. "I need to know something," she said carefully. "If I asked you to stop all of this, the gifts, the extravagance, the five-star everything, would you?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes. Even if it meant just being still, no spotlight, no curated perfection, just existing." Callum nodded. "If it meant being with you." "Yes." Lila studied him for a long moment. "Okay. Okay, I believe you. But if you ever try to surprise me with a private yacht, I'm out." He smiled. Noted. They left the gallery hand in hand, walking without urgency through the quiet streets. When they reached her building, she paused. "Come upstairs," she said softly. He didn't move. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Not because I owe you, not because of the wine or the paintings, because I want to." They took the elevator in silence. Once inside her apartment, Lila kicked off her shoes and turned on a lamp. The space was modest, warm, filled with mismatched bookshelves and a couch that had clearly seen better days. A half-finished puzzle lay on the coffee table. Callum looked around. "This is you," she smiled. "What gave it away?" "The sagging cushions or the fact that there are 3 mugs in the sink." He walked deeper in, touching nothing but absorbing everything. "Can I ask you something?" she said, tugging her sleeves over her hands. "Anything. If I hadn't opened that hotel door, if you'd gone to the right room, do you think we ever would have met?" He stepped closer, his voice just above a whisper. "No, and I would have missed the best mistake I've ever made." She reached for him then, and when their lips met, it wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was slow, intentional, like something earned. The night unfolded around them, not lavish, not scripted. Just 2 people letting down their walls and finding something real in the quiet. And for the first time in years, Callum didn't feel like he had to be anything but himself. Lila stood barefoot in her kitchen 2 weeks later, her worn pajama pants brushing the tile floor, a mug of coffee warming her hands. She stared out the window, the early morning light catching on the fire escape, and tried not to overanalyze the way her life had shifted. Not in a sharp, dramatic curve, but gradually, steadily, like waking up to find the furniture rearranged and realizing it somehow fit better. Callum had made himself a part of her world with a precision that should have felt intrusive, but never did. He didn't try to fix her life, didn't drown her in extravagance. He just showed up, held her hand without asking, waited while her students swarmed her after school, listened when she ranted about parents who didn't return permission slips. He'd become real. She heard the key turn in the front door. Callum stepped in, tucking his phone into his coat pocket. His hair was wind-blown and his scarf hung crooked around his neck. "You're early," she said, setting the mug down. He leaned against the doorframe. "I wanted to see you before my flight." She crossed her arms. "Still trying to avoid telling me where you're going?" "It's not that I don't want to tell you." "Then tell me." He walked to her slowly, hands in his pockets. "I was going to make it a surprise, but you hate surprises." "I don't hate them. I just don't like being blindsided." Callum stopped in front of her. "I bought something." She narrowed her eyes. "If it's a yacht, I swear it's a school." Lila froze. "You what?" He took a breath. "There's a building in Brooklyn. It used to be a community center. It's been sitting empty for years. I bought it and I'm funding the renovation. I want to open a school there. A real one, with arts programs and mental health resources, and I want you to run it." She stared at him, stunned. "You did all that without asking me?" "I wasn't going to hand you a job wrapped in a bow. I wanted to build something that meant something to you, then ask if you'd help make it real." She sat down hard on the stool beside the counter. "That's not a gift. That's a legacy." "I don't care about legacies," he said. "I care about you." He pulled a thick folder from his coat and set it on the counter. Floor plans, budget outlines, an architect's rendering, everything carefully labeled but with one tab marked in blue ink, for Lila. "I don't want to build things that don't matter anymore," he said quietly. "And you've made me want to matter in a way I didn't before." She opened the folder slowly. Inside the tab labeled for her were pages of notes, her notes. Ideas she'd scribbled on napkins, things she'd said in passing. A sensory room for overstimulated kids. A garden where students could grow their own snacks. A music program that didn't depend on fundraising. "You actually listened," she whispered. "I always do." Lila touched the edge of the page, her heart thudding. "Why now?" Callum exhaled. "Because I don't want to live in hotel rooms and boardrooms anymore. I want roots. I want a life that doesn't reset every time I land in a new city, and I want that life with you." She looked up at him, her voice hoarse. "You don't even know if I'll say yes. I'm not asking for an answer today. But I am asking for this." He reached into his coat again and pulled out a key. "The building's yours if you want it. No strings, no expectations." She took the key, holding it like it might vanish. "You terrify me, I know. But you also make me feel like I can finally stop running." Callum stepped closer. "Then don't run, stay, build something with me." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "Say it." He cupped her face with both hands. "I love you, Lila." She let out a breath like she'd been holding it for years. "I love you too." He kissed her, gently at first, then with the kind of certainty that came from knowing exactly where he belonged. Later that afternoon, Lila stood inside the old building in Brooklyn, the scent of dust and old plaster clinging to the air. Callum had left for his meeting, just one last commitment he couldn't miss. She walked through the echoing halls alone, the key still in her pocket. She paused in one of the rooms, where sunlight streamed through cracked windows and dust floated like glitter in the light. She could already see it, a reading nook by the far wall, easels near the windows, shelves filled with books instead of administrative binders. She turned as footsteps echoed behind her. Callum stood in the doorway. "Flights canceled," she blinked. "Seriously," he shrugged. "Or I just never booked it," she laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible." He walked toward her. "I'm yours." They met in the center of the room, surrounded by future and dust and light. "I want to do this," she said. "Build the school, build everything. With you." His hands closed around hers. "Then let's start now." A year later, the school opened with a ceremony that Lila insisted remain informal. No red carpets, no speeches from politicians, just students, teachers, and families. Callum stood beside her under a white canvas tent as children raced around the playground she'd designed herself. He leaned down. "You were right about the garden. It's the kids' favorite part. I told you. They like watching things grow." He looked at her, his voice low. "So do I." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. They didn't need a yacht or a private island. They had something better, a life built not on spectacle but on quiet, unwavering truth, and for the first time both of them knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the newly opened school's main office, casting a soft glow across the polished floors and fresh white walls. Lila stood in front of the bulletin board, pinning up a hand-drawn crayon poster that read "Welcome to our new home" in uneven letters. She stepped back, admiring it with a proud little nod. Behind her, Callum leaned in the doorway, a clipboard in hand, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, exposing a fading ink stain on his forearm from unpacking boxes with the art teacher earlier that morning. "You're doing it again," he said. She turned, brows raised. "Doing what?" "That thing where you pretend you're not the one who made all of this happen." Lila gave him a look. "It wasn't just me." "No," he said, walking toward her, "but you're the reason it feels like more than a building." She tilted her head. "You think sentiment is what makes a school?" "I think you do." Lila hesitated, then reached for his hand. "You're not bad at this, you know." "At what?" "Being part of something you don't control." He looked down at their joined hands. "It's easier when it's something I believe in." She squeezed his fingers gently. "You said you didn't care about legacies, but this is one." "I didn't care before, but now I want to leave something that matters." "Because you do." She smiled, then looked past him as the front door opened and a woman stepped in, her coat dusted with flour, a box in her arms. "I brought muffins," the woman called, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Lila. You must be the one who made this miracle happen. Lila blinked. Sorry, have we met? Not officially. I'm Mrs. Espinoza. My daughter's in the first grade class. She's been talking about the cool new school with the garden all week. Callum took the box from her arms. Let me get these to the break room. Mrs. Espinoza touched Lila's arm. She came home yesterday and said she wants to be a teacher now. You gave her that. After she left, Lila stood quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the spot where the woman had been. You okay? Callum asked when he returned. It's just. I don't think I ever really knew what it would feel like to make this kind of difference. Well, he said, setting the empty box on the desk. Get used to it. That evening, they sat on the rooftop of their new apartment only a few blocks from the school with takeout containers spread out between them. The view wasn't dramatic, but it was theirs. Brick buildings, fire escapes, a faint skyline in the distance. Lila picked at a spring roll. You know what I realized today? What's that? You haven't checked your phone once in hours. He leaned back against the ledge. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. She looked at him, studying the way his face relaxed in the soft orange light. You've changed. I've stopped pretending I need to be everywhere at once. This is enough. She nudged him with her shoulder. You sure you don't miss the chaos? Not when I've got this kind of peace. They both sat in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Then Lila asked, You ever think about the hotel room that night? Every day. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I wasn't looking for anything when you walked through that door. Neither was I, and yet, he kissed her temple. And yet here we are. A few weeks later, the school held its first family arts night. Parents flooded the halls, admiring painted self-portraits and clay animals, while the music room vibrated with off-key recorder performances. Lila stood just outside the gymnasium, clipboard in hand, watching the chaos unfold with a kind of wonder. Callum approached from the other end of the hall, holding a little girl's hand. She beamed up at Lila. This is Ava, Callum said. She wanted to show you her drawing. Ava held up a piece of paper with a crayon sketch of a woman standing between two tall buildings, arms wide. It's you, she said. You're making the city better. Lila crouched down. That's beautiful, Ava, thank you. Callum watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. When Ava darted off to find her mother, he turned to Lila. You're going to fill this city with girls who think they can change the world. She looked up at him. You're the one who gave me the chance. He shook his head. I just handed you the keys. You built the doors. That night, when they returned home, Lila wandered into the bedroom and found a small velvet box on her pillow. She stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. Callum stood in the doorway, silent. She opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in a band that looked like it had been crafted to match her exactly. No flash, no fanfare. She turned to him, eyes wide. I didn't want to ask in front of a crowd, he said. I didn't want it to be about the spectacle. I wanted it to be just us. Lila walked toward him slowly. I've spent my life building things, he said. But nothing I've ever created compares to what we have. I want to keep building this with you. Will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes. They kissed with the kind of certainty that only came from being tested, from choosing each other again and again, even when it would have been easier not to. The wedding was small, just close friends, a few teachers, some of the students who begged to be flower girls. It rained in the morning, but cleared by noon. Lila wore a blush silk dress with sleeves that brushed her wrists. Callum wore a navy suit, no tie, his hair still damp from the drizzle. They said their vows beneath a canopy of string lights in the school's courtyard, where the garden had already begun to bloom. Later, as they danced slowly beneath the stars, Lila rested her head against Callum's chest. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd gotten the right room that night? I try not to, he said, because it means I might never have found you. Well, she whispered, I'm glad you didn't. So was he. And from that night on, from the wrong key to the right life, they never looked back.